Commitment to work is an important expectation in any organization. Our view of the senior manager internal audit is that whatever he might have said in a moment of dejection or temporary frustration, he was a very committed worker. That some of your groups have also identified and said. He may have resented being sent out like that to investigate something which very senior people compared to him who had done. Nobody else from the head office ever was sent on those difficult assignments. Only he was sent always. So at one time he exploded, he said this. I think you will grant that this is something which anybody of us can do at some time. Something very natural. But then that is an incidental comment in our view. The main thing is he took the job in right earnestness and went about it in a manner which helped to reveal the truth. In the process, some people say he went beyond his remit. It's very difficult. If one has to take some informal methods and routes to discover what is the route taken by the scam, wouldn't you expect that of the internal audit? So I think on that score we wouldn't fault him. So far as the GM is concerned, our assessment is that he is primarily a tamasik character. A rather sly person, evading anything for himself, dodging the issues and passing it on to the senior manager internal audit and cleverly manipulating facts out of him. So he doesn't come up very well, mostly tamasik I suppose. If you want to categorize the senior manager internal audit, we would say he was Rajaso Sattvic. He did not make any personal demands as such, no official demands. He merely gave a feeling at one point in time. Why are you always sending me to such things? Where is my recognition? But then he does the job. So it is Rajaso Sattvic. He was active, he was dynamic, he was not slothful, and he tempered it with his sattvic quality of honesty. Coming to the chief accountant, he was definitely Rajaso Tamasic. There was not a trace of sattva in him so far as this case is concerned. He is totally Rajaso. So you see in the morning when we said these values plus Rajoga, they will produce unethical. Reliability was contaminated with high level of greed. Along with that, he had very high level of skills. So very low standard of values and high level of skills. Diagram 13 May, you have rightly pointed out, he belongs to high skills, low values group, which is quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Probably the most dangerous set of people in society at large, in organizations also. And lastly, the cashier I think is insignificant so far as the context of the case is that he is an insignificant character, a small fry at the receiving end. He has no authorities, he has no powers. So he carries on just with his job, that's all. There is hardly any scope for him to show any initiative, partly because of his compulsions or his own situations. So finally then, what is the lesson? The lesson is, no matter how much we improve systems, unless the values are also simultaneously improved, systems will not deliver the goods. Because there will be always people with low values who will be there to find out the goods. Whatever adequacy you do, today you do an adequacy, tomorrow you will find some intelligent fellow finding a loophole and subverting it. This is the way the society is going all the time. You see, you go to a bank today, how much hassle you have in opening a bank account, in filling up the various forms to draw your own money. We have been banking for 50 years, 55 years. Comparing that to today's situation, from opening to a bank account to getting the money from your own account, and the extent of information you have to fill up for depositing a check and for drawing the money, what does it indicate? It all indicates decline in human values. We may take pride that हम बहुत sophisticated systems बना रहे हैं, But the immediate other side of the coin is क्यों sophisticated systems की जरूरत पड़ती है? क्योंकि हमारा चरित्र खराब हो गया। 5 decades ago, human quality and character was generally much better. So simpler systems worked. But as technology improved, as human intelligence improved, IQ improved, people became more and more negatively values oriented, and simultaneously systems had to be tightened and tightened. Now where this will end, we have no idea. It may seem ultimately that the human being will be so much overburdened with systems that he may become half-mad. We have this year we have filled up an income tax return which is 20 pages in fine print. और उसको टाइटल दिया है सरल, सी दी जोक, उसको सरल कहते हैं। पहले 5-6 पन्ने थे, इस दफा हमने फिलअप किया है, उसके 20 पन्ने हैं और इतना फाइन प्रिंटिंग है। क्या इंडिकेट करता है? It is a reflection on our character. So let us wake up and do something about our own selves first, ताकि ऐसे systems की जरूरत न पड़े। That is the ideal thing to go for. जैसा इन्होंने वो NGO के बारे में कहा, most primitive system they operate, most primitive. कोई professional accountant नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं। Year after year, in all their branches, of professional auditors make the audits, and they never have to qualify any transaction as being underhand or doubtful or suspicious. Never. कैसे हो गया? System तो primitive है, होता इसलिए है कि system adherence बहुत पक्का है, और वो क्यों पक्का है? Because the members of that system themselves are very strong in character and values. तो ये है perspective. बाकी हम लोग अपने आप में let us generate further thoughts as you go along in your professional lives. केस में भी हम कुछ और पढ़ेंगे अभी। So this case we will continue here, and we will keep a few minutes of observe a few minutes of silence. Please शांत हो जाइए। Our programs we adopt this periodic silence. In the morning, unfortunately, we could not introduce this because somewhat pressure of time was there. We will give you the reason for that, and you should try to inculcate this habit in your own work roles. These few minutes of brain canvas allows rearrangement and reshuffling of too many thoughts and cross currents which are going on in the mind when I am actively working. This silence break allows things to fall into place, adjust themselves one against the other, and you gain a clearer perspective. And it also has the advantage of recalling from your memory store some forgotten connections or links which are relevant to the job or the task at hand. If you do this, only then you will realize it. Without doing this, you can verify it. This is verifiable by everyone. So the difficulty, of course, is that once we are in the workstation and the ball starts rolling, it knows no stopping. This is the difficulty. Now, it will require initially some struggle to get this discipline. Say every 2 hours or so, a few minutes of silence in the workstation itself. I do not say every time, everywhere, somebody out on the field can do it, all the time. But I am sure during the working day, everyone will find some time to do it. Mobile को बंद कर दीजिए, टेबल में टेलीफोन कनेक्शन को थोड़ा सा बंद कर दीजिए. This depends on ourselves. It acts like a tonic to your nervous system, the functioning of the brain, and the recall capability from memory. To recall better on that. So I have regularly found this to happen. Recall of ideas, facts or events which are connected to the current subject. That is why we do it. So if you can make it a habit of yours during the work, day work shift, whichever is relevant to you, you will find it very beneficial. You want to ask?
Yes, sir, I want to ask one question. Since our organizations are moving at a very fast pace, I just want to ask one question, that to what extent system adequacy can compensate for the lack of system adherence in organizations? I would illustrate with one example, if I'm not wrong. I have read in the newspaper that electricity theft in New Delhi has drastically come down after this NDPL came into being of Delhi government and BCS. The point is that electricity theft is common even in Jhuggi Jhopris and upper middle class. The government is not able to curtail this electricity theft. It's a question of values and ethics. Even people who are able to pay electricity bills, they are not ready to pay. So a system was built, mechanisms were devised to curtail the losses. I would say this is an example of system adequacy. Just because we are not able to imbibe certain values or ethics, because it is a time-taking process. To change a human being, to change attitudes and values, it is a very time-consuming process. And in this fast-moving world, organizations have to compete with other organizations. To that extent, I would like to ask, to what extent system adequacy would compensate for the lack of system adherence, because we are not able to adhere to the systems.
Very partial, very insignificantly.
Very partial.
The advantage will be very temporary and short term.
Okay.
And the next day or the next month or the next year, a new kind of way of beating the system will be evolved. It will always be a very temporary kind of advantage. Many illustrations we have given you already. So I would suggest that continuous efforts for the adherence type of supplementary effort must continue in the organizations. That of course brings us to the classical point of view. हम जिसको conservative कह के हंसी उड़ाते हैं, the strength of the conservative approach to work, to life has been that don't break something which restrains you from the ordinary tendencies of the mind. If you break the restraint, sanyam, you never know where the flood will go and how much the flood will devastate. वही आज हो रहा है. So now we are paying the price. Modern mentality having ridiculed the conservative mentality, which essentially was a mentality of self-restraint, atma-sanyam. That has been the crux of the conservative mentality. Modern gospel says these things destroy personality growth. तो सब कुछ हम लोगों ने छोड़ दिया धीरे धीरे, starting with sex and money and everything, we have let loose. So naturally we find the consequences in the form of these scams in organizations and much else in the homes and the families also. I am not saying that merely diagnosing this will help us, but let us be honest and sincerely accept that this is the error we have made. And we are continuing to make that error, and the result of that error we are wanting to compensate by system adequacy. Swami Vivekananda made a very powerful statement more than a century ago, आप नोट कर सकते हैं. वो कह रहे थे, the more the laws a society needs to govern itself, the surer is the sign of its decay. अब लिख लीजिए इसको, bold अक्षरों में लिखिए. The more laws a society, law, LAWS, the more laws a society needs to govern itself, the surer is the sign of its decay. कितनी बड़ी बात कितने दिनों पहले बताया था, वही हो रहा है आज. तो जितने सिस्टम्स बनाएंगे, जितना टाइट करेंगे, it is not a sign of improvement of the human quality. It is rather a sign that the human quality is coming down. He stated it in a broad frame. The more legislation is required to run a society, the more it is the sign of the decay of that society, not improvement of that society. The more the number of laws, LAWS, a society needs, to govern itself, comma, the surer is the sign of its decay, D-E-C-A-Y. You go on comparing all the events in our lives and society against that statement. It is a benchmark statement. It is a benchmark statement. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, there were no vigilance departments in public sector undertakings. Every public sector undertaking has a vigilance department. है ना? Earlier, internal audit, statutory audit was sufficient. Today, internal audit is not sufficient. You have to have a vigilance department. And a vigilance officer reporting directly to the CMD. Is it a sign of, is it a good reflection on you and me? It speaks badly of me. That I am such a quality of a human being that even internal audit is not sufficient. Why? There has to be a chief vigilance officer. इस तरह की कितने ही institutions हैं. All of them, if you take together, they speak very ill of you and me as members of society. ये गर्व की बात नहीं है, शर्म की बात है. So the problem is हम लोगों को शर्म नहीं आता. शर्म की बात भूल गए हम लोग. शर्म का है. मुझे ये चाहिए, मुझे ये लेना है, मुझे ये करना है, करना है बस. अपनी मर्जी. शर्म का है. So देखिए उसका नतीजा देखते रहिए आप लोग.